Hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video it is something special because I'll be talking about this camera right here. So usually on my channel I talk about old cameras, being like old digital SLRs and old digital mirrorless cameras and why they're still good and why I recommend it and why I don't recommend some of them. So in this video it is something special because I'll be talking about film cameras, so just a little bit of a break and kind of different approach to my channel because usually I talk about the digital side of things and this is analog. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So the Nikon EM, this is actually one of my favorite cameras of all times. It's nothing super special, it's just I really like the simple build quality, the simple design, the simple color on here, and just the simple operation of this camera. It's nothing super nice looking or nothing super unique, it's just a simple camera, and I just really like simple cameras, and it's not expensive at all for nowadays. This camera was released way back in 1979, I believe. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. It's a semi-automated camera, so if you put in a battery here, it will actually calculate the shutter speed for you, and therefore you get a nicer exposed image, versus if you don't put a battery in here, you're just dealing with like almost manual camera because it will just be stuck to like one shutter speed, I believe. So yeah, this video is not a review video, but rather a video about my opinion on this camera and my conclusion, like why I recommend still getting this film camera, because I still think it's a nice film camera to have, and especially for its price. So in this video I'll be talking about the design, ergonomics, operational side of things, and then into the image quality, and then into my conclusion. So first things first, in terms of the build quality and the operational side of things, well, this camera is nicely built in my opinion. So even though you still feel a lot of plastic on this camera, there are definitely certain parts that are metal, but it's not really intrusive. It's very simple design, as I mentioned earlier. It's very discreet in my opinion. It's also really small in my opinion as well. What I really like about this camera is that it has all the necessary things that a film camera needs to simply operate at the time for this class of camera. There's a simple, not a display, but like a view over here that like indicates how many shots you've taken, and then this is the simple winder that you take the shutter here. I also like the shutter sound, and actually the shutter feel on this camera is also really nice and heavy, that you feel it, but you also feel the vibration of the camera as it lands after it clicks. I also like the ISO dial here. It's not easy to turn, but it's also just there, simply there, that you can just see. I also like the fact that there's this window right here where you can just put the tag of the film, so you know what film you have on here at all times. So sometimes if I just, like right now I have a film in here, but I have no idea of like which film I have inside, because I don't use just one film. I use many film looks. I think Kodak Gold is one of them, then there's Fujifilm, I think Provia I have as well, and I also have the Agfa black and white. So these are the three main films that I switch, but I also sometimes just buy random films that has different look just for the sake of interest of it. But yeah, amongst these three films I don't know which one I have in here, so yeah. I simply just forgot to put the tag behind it, but usually I do, which is actually useful if you have a camera sitting on the shelf, like a camera like this sitting on the shelf for like 3 months, and 3 months later you don't know if like what kind of film you have in there. So yeah, there's that. I really like that. The build quality, it's nothing super special. You look in here, what you see is what you get. So yeah, as I said, it's simple. Everything you need is there. There's no gimmick features or anything. There's the self-timer lever over here that you can set your self-timer to, and the lens eject is over here, just like how modern DSLRs would really have as well. It's not one of those screw-on lens. So yeah, it's a really nice old classic camera, but not too old of course, and there's not really much to really say about it. So next, in terms of the image quality, so this is not a digital camera, so I'm not going to be talking about the color depth, color science, color reproduction of this particular camera, because The actual color depends on well, partly depends on the lens, of course, but also mainly depends on the actual film you put in there. So it determines of like what light you have in there, like what color, what effect of the film color you have in there and everything. But in terms of the lens design, it really also depends on which lens you pair this camera with, because this is interchangeable, obviously, just like normal SLRs. And different lenses will give you a different look, just like modern cameras. So, but like in terms of the image quality, what you get from this standard lens, it's a 50mm, and it's most likely the lens that you'll get with this camera in most cases, I believe, if you're buying this camera used, and I think it's only available used. Anyway, so it's really nice image quality. I really love the image quality out of this camera, well, mainly thanks to the lens and the actual film itself as well. But the look of this particular lens coming from, well, this particular lens, of course, it's really nice. There's that characteristic of like using old analog camera as well, but it's not like too unsharp that it looks soft, like some of the 1950 cameras, film analog cameras, that gives you that softness look. It's sharper than that, but it's not sharp like, you know, that's from a modern DSLR kind of sharpness. There's like a really nice sweet spot, and when you look at the images from this kind of camera with this kind of lens era, there's that vibe of that analog to it that I cannot explain. You start to care less about the technicality of how that image was captured, but just look at the image for what they are. So yeah, it's really something special that I cannot really explain about the image quality that's coming out of this particular camera, but I do like it mainly for that reason as well. And being a really stripped down camera, I think that, you know, it really helps the photographer to really focus on the actual scene and the actual concept of the camera, or the actual concept of the images, sorry, and the actual look of the image as well. And because we're so used, well, I'm so used to my modern DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, sometimes it's also just really nice to take a break and just go simple without just looking at the back of the image of back of the screen of what I get. It's really nice and exciting to actually see, like, after you take in the images, after you used up all that roll of films, and just to see what images you've taken later, how the results will look like. And it's just like the modern day equivalent of like if the photographer went out for a photo shoot and then come back and then just let the images breathe by just not looking at the images for one day and just take a look at it the next day. It's kind of like that feeling as well. So you have certain value, or value the images more than if you were just to take a look at the images right away, because that just feels more like snapping a picture. But obviously this is just my opinion and how I feel about it, and it's just really nice in general. And to the conclusion, because there's not really much to talk about the actual image quality. The conclusion, I still really highly recommend this camera if you're looking for like a semi-automatic camera that gives you still a lot of manual features, but also giving you that analog option that you want versus digital, of course, but like still deliver really nice images at a really cheap price. So I got this camera for like 37 euros together with this case. It's still a really nice, almost brand new leather case that you just put onto, but I just never really use it because it just makes the camera really big, in my opinion. I obviously can just take the cover off and just use this leather case, but even then it still feels big. But it's a really compact analog camera, in my opinion. Of course, there are still smaller analog cameras out there in the market, but this is still considered small, in my opinion, to really just take around. And yeah, if you're traveling and using this as like a backup camera or just alongside your digital camera, it's still nice to carry around. It's not too heavy. It's not really light that it feels cheap either, or light that it's gonna fall apart. It just feels nice, and it just feels right to really carry it. When I take pictures with this camera, and if I'm exploring new places, it just makes me feel like I'm actually also there in the city when taking the picture. I don't know how best to describe it, but like if I were to take the picture with my digital camera, it just feels like, okay, capture, done. But like with the analog, it's just I don't really care too much about the actual camera and the actual settings I set it to, but because I guess I paid more attention to the process of setting the camera and taking that shot, just making sure I have the good exposure and framing, and that's it. Just makes me feel more connected, I guess. It's a very cliche saying, but yeah, I do understand that kind of saying, I guess. But overall, I do recommend this camera because it is affordable and also really, really fun to use, in my opinion. And the image quality out of this camera, well, image quality, is still really, really nice and really, really unique to a certain extent to really, really look at. That's it for this short video. Again, it's not a review video, it's just my opinion about this camera, why I recommend it. So there's that. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you need a free photography guidebook or a free 2021 photography calendar, it's linked down in the description below. It's a digital download. I will not ask you for your email address, nothing, it's absolutely for free. So yeah, thank you very much again for watching. Have fun shooting. Bye for now.